rubbish.
to
We haven't believed it.
20% of the wealth of this country is gone.
Oh, rubbish! Honestly,
That's not rubbish, Chris.
But my argument is, I mean, what about this Professor Patrick? I forget his name now. Patrick Minford. That's it. Patrick Minford, who said that Brexit could possibly bring 160 billion pounds to the economy through numerous free trade deals that we.
Well, I'm mystified as to what it is that we are not currently exporting that other countries would want. I mean, Theresa May's going to Japan to try desperately to extricate some kind of trade deal from them. And the Japanese are already sucking their teeth for thinking that they're going to withdraw investment from this country because of the problems with, potentially the increase in tariffs going from here to Europe. But what would we produce that Japan would want that we don't already sell them? I mean, what are we going to go into the kabuki makeup business? What?
Well, to be fair, we do make Nissan cars already, Nick, and Nissan have said that they're going to stay here. Amazing enough, English. Let's not get carried away. They said that they're going to stay here. They do sell cars here. Whether that means that they would expand in this country or decide to expand in future within the EU, well. Staying here, yes, because they want the business that comes with this market, but it doesn't mean to say that they're going to base their EU operations here. But as well, Nick, I mean, it's funny because I'm quite a pessimist about certain things, and one of the things I am optimistic about is Brexit. I genuinely think a lot of people saw it as a chance to, if you like, reinvent ourselves as a country, to wipe the slate clean, if you like. And yes, and look, Nick,
I don't understand what that means. We reinvent ourselves as what?
Well, what I'm saying is that perhaps maybe, you see, a lot of people saw the European Union as kind of an evil arm of globalisation.
Right, well, that's preposterous.
Trying to make everything the same, because the thing is, Nick, if you look at
the EU aren't making everything. If you go to France and you want to go to a restaurant, then you will find that the restaurant in whatever town you're in will be run by a local person. If you go to a restaurant in this country, you'll find it's Pret-a-Manger, it's Giraffe, it's Pizza Express. Every high street in this country is the same, as opposed to European towns where they are different and they're locally run. If you want to stem globalisation, then we are primarily guilty of it, not Europe.
Well, that's true. I think we are certainly areas guilty of it. But I think also what the European Union was trying... A lot of people voted to leave as well because they joined it as a free trade agreement in 1973. They didn't sign up to a political union to try and get rid of national borders and have a European army. And I think that as well...
There is no European army, but I think it would be a good idea if we had. So we could spread the cost about.
Yeah, but there was rumours about it, and I think as well. If you compare, they were essentially trying to make the European Union a rival to the United States, and I just don't think it's practical because you have all these countries.
Of course it is.
Well, no, it isn't practical because you've got all these countries with very different cultures, very different languages.
Well, you could say that about the states of America. You think Tennessee is the same as New York?
Well, no, it isn't, but at least they speak the same language, to be fair, Nick.
Well, what difference does that make? They speak the same. Everybody in Europe speaks the same language. Have you been to Europe? They all speak English.
It's not happening to Europe. Well, it depends. France is 50-50. You can meet some people that don't speak English at all, and some that speak it very well. Italy the same. The Northern European countries...
Listen, if people are running businesses in Europe, they speak English, or they'll have access to somebody who is a translator. Don't worry about that, Chris. Language is not a barrier.
Well, as I said, the Northern European...
And I think that we're closer in our mindset to the French, for instance, than we are to people who live in Arkansas.
Well, yeah, but some people would argue that we're more close to American culture, especially under the Tories, than we are towards Europe. I mean, the Tories have always been pro-American because they believe in trickle-down economics, and which I think, quite frankly, is a farcical because the economics doesn't trickle down.
Our approach to business may be like America, but I don't think that culturally we are like America. I mean, it would grate upon us if we went to a restaurant and we saw another customer there with an automatic machine gun.
scare us as well.
Well, exactly. But it's par for the course in America.
But I do think as well, you see, the thing with America, there's very much a kind of, I think it was Michael Douglas that touched upon this as well, that there is a sort of anti-intellectual element in American culture.
Oh, God, are you kidding? There's an anti-intellectualism that runs through this country like words through Blackpool Rock.
Well, yeah, and that is probably a sort of thing. I mean, at least in France, for instance, you have a lot more. I mean, France is much more pro-academic than we are. They have their politicians are very well educated. They've some got PhDs as such, and
whereas people in this country have seemed very, very suspicious of people who are educated and who are well spoken.
But well, let me touch upon one of these as well. I did say that it could be a chance to reinvent ourselves. I mean, I think here's the thing, and you can call me crazy if you like, but why not let's bring back Rover cars, Rover Metro.
Oh my God!
We could have a British-made car in this country. We could slap tariffs on imports. Imagine what that would do.
We do make cars, but we make cars for people who are significantly better at making cars than the British ever were. British-made cars had the quality of not starting. My family bought British-made cars, and they were uniformly awful.
But with the technology that exists now, Nick, I'm sure we can make them better. And I'll tell you what as well, selling Rolls-Royce off was a crime. I'll tell you what, the politicians who decided to sell Rolls-Royce off, they should be hung, drawn and quartered.
Well, I challenge you to name a single thing that we would say was archetypally British that is actually owned by British people. I can't think of anything. Name one thing.
But that's why people voted for Brexit, because they wanted to put our needs first.
No, that's not putting our needs first. And that has nothing to do with Brexit. That's other companies coming in and buying up for things that are associated with Britain. That's us selling off our silver. It has nothing to do with Europe at all.
Yeah, but...
what you're saying is that people voted for Brexit because they wanted to go back in time. And primarily, I suspect they wanted to go back in time to a period when they were more youthful. And
at least you could buy a house back in the 1970s. You can't buy a house now.
Chris, that time has gone. We can't go back. We don't have a time machine. Brexit's not a time machine.
A time machine. I know that, but the government could do things to help us with affordable housing. And the Tories certainly are good.
Yeah, but that's got nothing to do with the EU.
Well, look, the EU, and it's funny because even Gina Miller said this, the EU will probably be totally different in 8 years' time than it is now. Maybe it might even be a looser EU. Maybe, if you think about it, there's already a Eurosceptic movements growing all over Europe, in France, Germany.
Well, there's also a Nazi movement. Should we just join that too? Just because people think something does not mean to say that it is necessarily a good idea. Chris, it's been entertaining, but we ain't getting anywhere. Thanks a lot, mate. 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850. Email nicka@lbc.co.uk, and if you are on Twitter, it's at LBC. In for Ian Collins, I'm Nick Abbott. This is LBC.
This is LBC.
We all get out of breath sometimes, like during exercise. But if you find yourself getting out of breath doing everyday things you used to be able to do, then your doctor will want to know about it. In fact, here's what the Daily Mirror's Dr. Miriam Stoppard has to say.
Feeling out of breath after exercise is normal. But if you're getting out of breath doing everyday things you used to be able to do, like climbing a short flight of stairs or doing light housework, you should talk to your GP about it. It could be a symptom of something serious, including heart or lung disease or even cancer. The good news is finding it early makes it more treatable, so your GP would be glad you contacted them.
If you're experiencing breathlessness doing everyday things you used to be able to do, don't ignore it. Speak to your doctor. Be clear on cancer. A message supported by LBC.
Another one drives a duster.
Another one drives a duster.
Another one drives a duster.
Hey, why don't we get one too?
Another one drives a duster.
The Dacia Duster SUV, starting from just $9,495. With over 100,000 UK customers and fantastic owner reviews on our website. Isn't it time you got in on the action? Dacia, you do the maths.
England at Wembley. You can't describe it. Experience it for yourself. England's crucial World Cup qualifier v Slovakia. Wembley, 7:45pm, 4th of September. Tickets from £20, £10 for kids, £2.50 booking fee. Be there. thefa.com/tickets.
Hurry into Homebase for unmissable bank holiday deals. Right now, get Crown 2.5 litre standard coloured emulsion, just 2 for £22. Excludes pure brilliant white. Homebase, always low prices.
This is LBC with Nick Abbott. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850.
Roy texts, economic prosperity is not the be-all and end-all. Quality of life must be considered. I couldn't agree more. What improves your quality of life? Money. I'm not being cute when I say that. Well, maybe a little bit. But money does improve the quality of your life. It might not make you happier. That very much depends on whether you're intrinsically a happy person. Well, it might not make you happy, but I suggest it will make you happier, because with the 13% less money coming in to the government's coffers, for instance, then they would be able to afford even less of a quality service on the NHS than we're getting now. Holy smoke, they're turning people away. We've got the 5th largest economy in the world, and they're turning people away from a hospital for lack of money. Without being able to fix their knees and their hips and their eyes and God knows all what else. So less money is not what we need. I mean, they already aren't fixing the potholes outside your road, outside your house, on the road. I think less money is not really a good idea. A quality of life is intrinsically linked with money. Let's have South Norwood. Hello, Ray.
Hello, Nick. Belated, hello?
Yes, Ray.
Belated birthday to you.
Oh, thanks very much.
Listen, I'm just crazy about what's going on in this world today. I mean, we've got Britain with Brexit, and we've got America with Trump. I'm watching CNN, BBC, and I'm going on all the different stations, and I'm thinking, has the world gone mad?
Yeah.
Everybody's, Brexit is so silly. For a start, I heard Runke tell us after 3 months we were leaving, and we'd left, we'd given that Article 15 thing, and about 3 months later he said, well, Britain isn't ready. And I'm thinking to myself, but that's what the 3 months was about. The 3 months was supposed to be 3 months and 2 years. You've got 3 months up from the time you trigger it to leaving. We got to the 3 months and we weren't ready. So they knew then, and that's when the 28 countries signed. 3 months, if you aren't ready, you go back to the drawing board. That's when the European Union was supposed to come down and shut it off and say, listen, sorry, you aren't ready, go back to the drawing board, have another referendum, do whatever you have to do, but you aren't ready. To tell us 6 months later and say, oh, well, Britain isn't ready, that's what the 3 months was about, and I can't understand why nobody's taken them to court about that. That's the European Union, 28 countries, and they, at the top, missed it. Because they allowed us to carry on for 4.5 months, we hadn't triggered it. And then when we triggered it, we gave a 6-line piece of paper to them and said, okay, go on, trigger it. It was so badly done, and nobody has taken it up with the European Union about that particular point. And here we are, and the same thing in America. I mean, Trump is in charge and confusion everywhere. And they're just carrying on. And we're just carrying on with Brexit the same way. What's going on? Why don't we have anybody who comes down and stops things from escalating as they are escalating here? We're going into... nobody seems to know what they're doing.
Well, I think the thing that connects them both is we're listening to the people. Maybe the best idea is just not to cancel democracy. We just elect more people of higher intelligence, and they can just run things from this moment on. It's hard to believe that it could be worse.
It's freaking me out because I don't know exactly why it's happening, because it's all happening at the same time. That's what's so freaky. America is doing it. Britain is doing it. We see France, he's making up his face now at £20,000 a month. He's doing makeup on his face, and I'm thinking,
Well, I think people are getting a little bit carried away with that. They're reading the headline, but precious little else on that story. He isn't spending £21,000 a month on makeup. That's his makeup artist. Now, it does seem a ridiculous amount, and I would suggest that that's probably a fake news story, or it's something that somebody half understood and then made into a headline, and then it just gets repeated over and over again by journalists. But that'll be the wages of the person that does his makeup, not the actual makeup itself. But okay, Ray, I feel your pain. I'm as confused and bewildered as you are. Yeah, one of the things that is kind of annoying, I suppose, which came out this week is that, of course, people went thinking that we were being swamped, and all these other pejorative words about the numbers of migrants that were coming to this country, and the government just came out with the startling revelation that they miscalculated the amount of people that were coming here from abroad by the number of 100,000. Well, that would have been nice to know before people went to the polls. Don't you think? Ian emails, I think some Brexit people are thinking that they're not going off a cliff, but after some short-term pain, it'll be good and worth it. And they're, in fact, doing a favour to the younger generation, righting the mistake they made in 1973. This isn't my opinion, just being a devil's advocate, says Ian. After some short-term pain. The problem with short-term pain is you never get that money back again, but it might not be short-term. And short-term in economic cycles could be an entire generation. And I really don't think that the younger generation are thanking the older generation for doing them a favour. In fact, I know they're not. The young generation are furious that their older relatives have sent the country in a direction that they did not want to go in. And of course they're going to be paying for it, the younger people, for considerably longer than the older people are, because they're going to be around for longer. It just seems it's incredible that 71% of over 65s don't care if the country takes a big economic hit and people lose their jobs, just as long as they get what they want. How selfish is that? These results, this is from a YouGov poll, add to previous research suggesting that the strongest backing for Brexit came from older voters, and that age was the biggest divide in how the nation voted. Pensioners who are retired and own their own homes would appear to have less to lose from the economy going into reverse than younger voters with their lives ahead of them. That's just The Independent, and that seems to be about right. Pensioners have given a gigantic screw you to the younger generation. We want what we want, and we don't care how it hurts you. It's remarkable, really, that those are the people that we're listening to. And the younger people are not grateful. They're saying, thanks a lot, Grandad, you miserable old goat. There's much less extremist or Brexit extremism on the Remain side. And this is why I predicted that we would actually vote out. Is because that, but I know this from talking to people on the radio, the people who wanted out are extreme in their views. They're absolutely adamant. It's the thing that they appear to think about morning, noon and night. Whereas people who wanted to stay in the EU, well, they have other things to consider, and they're not so wrapped with this issue. So I suspected that 100% of those that wanted to leave would make their way to the polls, whereas a much lower percentage of those who wanted to stay could be bothered to go out because they had, other things to think about. It wasn't uppermost in their mind. So if it cost themselves or members of their family their job, only 18% of Remain voters believe it would be a price worth paying to remain in the EU. 18% of Remain voters, if it cost the economy greatly and it cost people that they know their job, only 18% of Remain voters believe that it will be a price worth paying to remain in the EU. 71% of those who wanted to leave, they don't care. They just want out. But it's just mystifying to me as to why. I mean, which part of their lives are being stymied by being a member of the EU? And how do they think that their lives will be improved on leaving? That's the part that I don't get. Nobody's actually explained it to me, other than just repeating these tired old phrases that we're going to get our country back, our country. We are going to, and who the we is in this part, I don't know. Do they imagine that suddenly the government is going to start paying attention to them? And that they feel left out and left behind and not part of the modern world because they think the government has been stymied by the evil EU, and at the moment the government is out from underneath the shackles of the evil European Union. Then suddenly the government will be paying attention to the poor and the left behind. What on earth about the history of this country leads you to believe that? So I think that statistic alone should start ringing warning bells in people's minds. 71% of over 65s who voted out don't care whether the country takes a big economic hit, and half of them would accept a member, even of their own family, losing their job as long as they get what they want. And those are the people that we're paying attention to. Those are the people that are determining the future of our country. The whole world's gone mad. Julian emails, once again, the Labour Party proves that they will say anything that they think will get them votes. If they thought that saying that Jeremy Corbyn was a transsexual female would help them, they would say it. Hopefully people will realise that Labour are even more clueless about Brexit as the Conservatives. Never mind, as you just stated, as long as we get out, says Julian. It's another email that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. You think that the Labour Party are the only political party that will say anything they can or anything that they think will get them votes? That's not the Labour Party. That's just politicians. That's their job. And as for that, never mind, just as long as we get out part, what I don't know, and nobody's, in all the time that I've been speaking to people about this, nobody has ever told me why they think things will be better. What leads you to that conclusion? It's mystifying. 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850. Email nick@lbc.co.uk. And if you are on Twitter, it's @LBC. Even the Daily Mail is printing stories on a regular basis now that suggest that we are heading in the wrong direction. And there's it's kind of an arcane and left field story about one company that is thinking about moving its operations abroad, and I'll come to that in just a minute. So the phone number is 0345 6060 973. It's Nick Abbot in for Ian Collins today on LBC.
On FM, online, on your mobile, and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 11 o'clock, a mystery chemical haze has left at least 50 people on the East Sussex coastline with streaming eyes, sore throats and vomiting. Emergency services evacuated several beaches this afternoon as hazard response units were deployed. It's thought the gas that came in from the sea, but it's not known what caused it. LBC's Louisa Marr is in Sussex and says it's affecting people for miles.
It's been reported as far as Bexhill, which from Burling Gap is around 17 miles by road between the two. So a really big area is affected by this. East Sussex Fire and Rescue Service say the chemical incident is ongoing.
People trapped by rising floodwaters in Texas have been told to stand on their roofs and wait for rescue following Hurricane Harvey. Emergency services say they've dealt with thousands of desperate calls for help. Waters have reached as high as second-storey homes. President Trump will visit the area on Tuesday. Jeremy Corbyn says he doesn't know how long any transitional agreement for the UK leaving the EU would be. Labour has shifted its policy, saying it's in favour of staying in the single market after Brexit in 2019. John Mills from Labour Leave tells LBC it's a rather expensive option, though.
It leaves us with a huge bill, because we'd be going on paying a subscription fee every year on top of the divorce fee, which it looks like we're going to have to pay as well. So it's a very, very expensive way ahead.
5 mountain climbers have died and another's been left seriously injured after an apparent accident in the Austrian Alps. The Red Cross says it appears they were roped together. Day 1 of the annual Notting Hill Carnival in West London is over. Tributes were paid to the victims of the Grenfell Tower disaster. Dozens of white doves were released to mark the start of the event, and a minute's silence was held. Security in the area is tight, but local MP Emma Denkhold says it's right that the carnival goes ahead.
We've been through the most terrible trauma, and this is something where the community comes together every year. It's a real participatory event with all the different voluntary organisations. They've been working on it all year.
Scotland Yard says 43 arrests have been made so far. And the mercury in some parts of the UK is expected to hit a record 29 degrees Celsius tomorrow. The highest August bank holiday temperature since records began is 27.1 in 2009. That takes us on to LBC weather. Cloudy and windy in the far north and northwest with some rain overnight. Dry elsewhere with clear spells but feeling humid in places. A low of 11 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Paul Smith.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Abbot.
Yes, I'm Nick Abbott in for Ian Collins this evening. Jules emails, Nick, the rubber is why people want out of the EU is they hate the aloof leaders of the EU. Tusk and Juncker, etc. Thinking if UK sinks, the pleasure to watch EU crumble and fat cats drown in Brussels. Take it back to trade and working laws only. Well, much of that didn't make any sense. The aloof leaders of the EU. We're being led by aloof leaders. What is Theresa May if not aloof? I mean, people want Jacob Rees-Mogg to take over the Conservative Party. He's the very definition of aloof. How about Boris de Pfeffel? Look up aloof in a dictionary. There'll be a picture of him right next to it. Aloof. Here is East Dulwich. Hello, Guy.
Hello, Nick. I'm loving the show. I'm actually quite astounded by the people that are texting in. Some guy before said that we had overcome economic misery in the past, and interestingly enough, he mentioned England and not the UK. And I think that's what the trouble is. I think the trouble is that these people over 65 are harking back to a time that never really was.
Yeah.
My mother is 73 and she goes on about, she is not a Brexiteer, but she goes on about how there was galloping TB, galloping polio, and people were poor. Yeah. And she's from Chelsea. She's from Chelsea.
But that was when people were happy, though, when they were dying early and they didn't have a penny to rub together.
Yes, she told me that their milkman was a man of 73 and he was so old that he could barely make it up the stairs and they would give him breakfast every morning and that he was so grateful.
Yeah, people were walking around with calipers on their legs, but at least they were happy. It's excruciating.
No, it's true. And I think that I know this sounds a bit too empirical, but I think that the decline of the UK occurs with the Suez crisis. And ever since then, we have this generation of people, the over 70s, who were brought up essentially by Edwardians, harking back to an empire that they only saw the twilight of. And I think that amongst a lot of these people, there is a great upset that countries like Germany and France, and to a lesser extent Italy, have become successful.
Well, but in general, the European economy is outperforming our own. We're tanking. Our currency is one of the worst performing in the world. Even Venezuela is asking if they can do us any favours.
Oh, of course, no. Merrill Lynch and Morgan Stanley last week suggested that in October, with the Tory party conference and with a return to the negotiations, that sterling could fall even further.
Well, that's very dangerous, Guy, because you are you're quoting experts in possession of facts, and as you know, nobody is interested in experts or facts anymore.
I know. How dare I quote experts? But and also another irony is that a lot of these Brexiteers are ex-Thatcherites, and the truth of the matter is, if we had a manufacturing economy, perhaps the weak pound would help us. But Margaret Thatcher destroyed our manufacturing. So as a consequence, we don't produce steel, we don't produce ships. Rolls-Royce is German, Aquascutum is Japanese, Barber, I think, is Italian, Harrods, who knows who it belongs to.
The Qataris.
So as a consequence, we can't succeed with a lower pound because our manufacturing industry is being destroyed. And that's nothing to do with the EU. It's to do with the fact that Thatcherism for 20 years wanted to turn this country into a service economy.
Well, they've been very successful in that regard. What we actually are now is a low a tax haven off the coast of Europe. That's pretty much that and weapons of mass destruction. That's pretty much what we do for a living.
Yes, of course, yes. And the truth of the matter is there are some parts of the EU, some parts of the UK, like Wales, that have some of the poorest areas of the EU. And it's because 20 years of Thatcherism destroyed the local economy.
That's what's really bizarre, is that the people who were in receipt of tens, if not hundreds of millions of pounds from the EU as methods of dragging them up out of their poverty, they voted to leave the EU, but the EU was only stepping in because of the successive governments' intransigence and not caring less about the prospect of those people. It's like we've given the public a gun and they've said thanks very much. I'd like to shoot myself in the foot with it.
No, it's true. It's what's going to happen to places like Wales and Cornwall once we have
there will be, unless the government changes its mind about the funding of those areas, and there's nothing to suggest that they will, then they will be significantly poorer. But at least they'll have got their country back, whatever that means.
Yes, but you see, where is the funding going to come from? It's going to come from taxes. They're going to tax us to make up the shortfall.
Well, the government has certainly decided that they're going to give corporations a pass, and that the tax burden is going to be levelled ever greater on individuals.
Yeah, of course. Yes, I totally agree.
They've made that very clear. Guy, I'm going to have to go, but thanks very much. 0345 6060 973. Tim emails, what part of leave don't you understand? The referendum was simple, leave or remain, and the government would implement what we voted for. I don't understand the part about the government chucking Brexit out just because you don't like it. The time for deciding Brexit was last year. We are leaving and Donald Trump is the president. Accept it and move on. I do not accept it. He's not my president. The guy who stuck up for the Nazis, that guy, not my president. I don't want him to lead the free world. I don't think he's qualified to run a bath, never mind about a country. But anyway, let's leave that out. I think that people voted for Brexit. They voted in the referendum in possession of no facts, in possession of misinformation. People didn't seem to care about learning what the potential consequences were. They didn't even have to read up on it. They just had to listen to what they were being told by the people that were running businesses on whom our economy is dependent. But they just blocked all that out. All they heard was Nigel Farage banging on about, we're going to get our country back. And they thought, oh yeah, that's right. And what they heard, we're going to get our country back, and they thought, oh, it's going to be just like it was when I was young, when it was always sunny and people were always happy. But that time never existed. That's a fantasy. CT texts, regarding all the Brexiteers who want to press ahead no matter what, it's a classic case of cutting off your nose to spite your face. As your colleague James O'Brien often says, it's been easier to fool people than it is to convince them that they've been fooled. Well, I think it's more than that. I think now, in a post-fact age, people aren't basing their opinions on information anymore. They're basing it on gut. And it's almost like a love affair. Because they have invested so much in that opinion, they are going to relinquish those ideals with, well, they just aren't. It's almost like losing a lover. It's they've invested so much of themselves in the notion of Brexit or Trump in this case. They both are, twinned. That to hear anything contrary is painful to them. It's as though their very being is being called into question. I think that's one of the reasons that you just can't talk to people anymore. They're not listening, and they just keep repeating the same dumb phrases over and over. We're going to take our country back. The EU isn't democratic. It's just nonsense like that. It's based on a complete misunderstanding. It was based on no information of any kind. Just slogans. I keep pointing people in the direction of a film which used to be a comedy about the future, and now it is a documentary about the present. It's called Idiocracy. I recommend you watch it. Let's have Watford. Hello, James.
Hi, I'm just going back to your fork in the road analogy.
Oh, yes.
One is if we did go back and choose option B, we're probably tying ourselves up with a lot of other cars. Cliff might not be there in 100 metres time, but it might be there in 500 metres time.
That's
and then,
true.
because we've all got to grip together, we've left them, when we fall off the cliff, we fall down the cliff harder because there's more of us together and we cause a bigger dent in the ground.
Well, you make a good point, particularly about the dent in the ground. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for us, I voted Brexit. I think it's better for us to break free and have control over what we want in society and what we want in the economy and immigration.
All right. Well, let me ask you this: what is the EU stymied that you want from the economy and society? What is it that has held us back, in your opinion?
I know immigration is a sore subject to many people, but I think we should be we shouldn't be having preferences over people from EU countries. If we need a nurse, why can't we open up to the whole world? If that nurse is from the Philippines or Australia...
we have opened up to the whole world. Have you been into a hospital lately? The medical staff are from everywhere.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and that's what I think should happen. But at the moment, anybody who wants to come from an EU country can come in freely, and that's absolutely fine. I've got no issue to a certain degree. But then you should be giving that right to everybody else in the world. We want the best.
Well, apparently we are giving that right to everybody else in the world. More people come from outside the EU than from inside the EU. Now we have complete control, supposedly. I mean, we have complete control. Or a great element of control about anybody that comes in. If people come in from the EU, they haven't got work in 3 months, we can sling them out. We choose not to do that. The government doesn't tell you that. They just say, it's the EU and there's nothing we can do about it. But there is something they can do about it. Other European countries enact that policy. We've chosen not to for the benefit of our economy. It's because we have industry which is demanding these people. Otherwise, they would not be making the kind of profits that they are and paying the taxes that they do with all the benefits that accrue from that. But if we're allowing more people in from outside the EU than inside the EU, then I don't understand the issue. I mean, we can cut it by half just by refusing people from outside the EU.
But we want the best qualified people here. And
that's not true either. When was the last time you went to a restaurant or a coffee shop or to have your car washed and you were served by a British person?
It happens frequently, but I'm guessing if you go to the coffee shops in central London, it's more people from Eastern European countries, and I'm happy with that. It's just that when I've had to hire people and someone's come to me with someone who's come from America or Central America or even Asia, I can't hire them because there's enough people in this country that come from Eastern European countries who are probably less qualified And when I've tried to get visas for people, it just hasn't worked out like that. So that's what's happened with immigration. Also going back to...
But I don't buy that. Well, what kind of business are you in?
I work in technology.
That's a bit vague.
Okay, so I work in entertainment technology, so a ticketing company. When we try to hire people with skills, it hasn't worked out the way that we wanted to, because we have to hire people who are already here. When we try to hire someone who's probably more qualified from outside the country, it just hasn't. We just haven't been able to, because we have to select from a talent pool that's already available in the country. That's my personal experience. Other people might experience things differently.
Well, which countries are you being refused the ability to hire from?
It's mainly countries like emerging markets like China that we want people to come over. People come over, do universities here, have university qualifications from a British institution, and then we're sometimes not allowed to hire them, although they've been living here for 3-4 years. Because there might be preference over someone from another country. It's not our decision. We just can't get visas for them.
Right, but that has little to do with the EU.
But we're hiring people in. We can't hire people. We have to hire people in from the. We have to hire people. We're trying to find the best qualified people, and it just hasn't worked out like that.
Right. Well, from what you're saying, that doesn't have anything to do with the EU, but. I wish you all the best with your technology. Thanks, James. 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850, email nick@lbc.co.uk, and if you're on Twitter, it's @LBC.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
A manipulative lesbian has been jailed for 10 years for falsely claiming she was raped or sexually assaulted by 15 different men over 3 years. Why? She was trying to make her girlfriend jealous. Gemma Beale's lies saw an innocent man spend 2 years in jail. Joseph Cotry-Monson is a criminal defence lawyer who specialises in sexual offences.
I've been on an interview with an anti-rape campaign where that person has tried to maintain with credibility that there is no such thing as a false allegation.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With Hampton by Hilton. Book direct for the lowest price.
Every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC.
Punching the air, Sally jumps out of her Renault Traffic van. Winning her second gardening contract feels even better than the first. Topiary has a new champion. Renault Pro Plus vans are trusted as the logistics partner to the Renault Sport Formula One team, delivering vital components day in, day out. See how the award-winning Renault Pro Plus range can power your team with reliability and aftercare service you can count on. Visit one of our Renault Pro Plus specialist dealers to find out more.
Star TV presents The Noura Sisters, live in Concert UK on the 2nd of September at the SSE Arena, Wembley, London. Tickets available now via ticketmaster.co.uk.
Did you know you can get real-time updates to find out when your bus is due? There are loads of mobile apps available, powered by TfL data, or you can visit our website, all of which make it easier than ever to plan your journey. Running for the bus may soon be a thing of the past. Search TfL improvements. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Now let's get one thing straight. The Vauxhall Vivaro puts in a shift. It's a real van that doesn't flinch at a hefty load. Space to handle the big stuff with up to 8.6 cubic metres of vanliness. Bluetooth and USB connectivity and a range of efficient engines. In other words, it's a real van's van. It's...
Here you go, sir. Your hazelnut and caramel soy latte.
Oh, with sprinkles.
Certainly, sir.
Like I said, a real van's van.
Get van savvy with the Vauxhall Vivaro. Contact your Vauxhall retailer today for a quote.
Nick Abbot on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
So the Daily Telegraph and the Daily Mail are two of the most ardent Brexiteer newspapers, wrapping themselves into the flag and persuading their readers that everything's going to go back to like it was when Ealing comedies were the thing. It's all going to be passport to Pimlico, and you'll be able to leave your front door open, and everybody will be friends, and we'll all be happy. But they do in the interests of truthful reporting, they are coming out with the stories that sort of go against that will sort of go against the rub. And it must have pained the Brexit flag-waving Daily Telegraph to report that the economy, our economy, is slowing down again, as exports fail to live up to hopes that the weak pound would boost overseas sales. Growth slowed to 0.2% in the 3 months to July, said the National Institute of Economic and Social Research. The service sector, which was the main driver for economic growth in the second quarter, appears to have slowed, said the National Institute of Economic and Social Research. We see a modest recovery in the second half of this year in response to strengthening global growth and a weaker currency, but on the flip side, they said consumer spending is likely to be weighed down by weak wage growth and investment spending held back by Brexit-related uncertainty. It came as data from the Office for National Statistics showed that exports fell in June, while Britain's manufacturing output stayed flat on the month. Analysts had anticipated something of a recovery in June, setting the UK economy up for a stronger second half of the year. But that didn't happen, despite the fact that our pound has tanked. For the second quarter overall, the deficit hit £8.9 billion, and that's significantly more than the £350 million a week that we were told would be available for the NHS. It's another lie. That's what irks mostly about the vote. It was that people went to the polls with a head full of lies and voted consequently. People had virtually no actual real information to base a decision on. So they based a decision on, would you like to go back in time? One factor concerning the weak pound and its surprising lack of effect on exports may be that rising import costs affect the raw materials and part finished goods that UK factories buy in from abroad. See, even the things that we make here aren't made with things that we make here. And a car is a perfect case in point. Our car industry is doing very well, but our car industry they don't make cars with things that are made here. We get them from all over everywhere, and they cross the borders multiple times before the actual car is finished. Like a bumper, for instance, will be made in France, and then it gets imported to this country where it gets sprayed, the final colour, and then it'll get exported to Germany, and they'll put the headlights in, and then it'll get brought back to here, and we'll apply the glue, and then it'll get sent to Italy, and they'll put the number plate on, and it just goes back and forth and back and forth. The Telegraph says economists studying the core export data, which strips out erratic components and energy, see little room for optimism. But, you know, they're just experts in possession of facts, and we are no longer interested in what those people have to say. It's all about feelings. Gillingham. Hello, Stephen.
Hello, Nick. Good evening. Nick, I'm a little confused, and I wonder if you could help me out with something.
I doubt it.
I'm sure you can. Did you vote in the referendum?
Yes.
Could you remind me, please, of the question on the ballot paper?
Would you like to go back in time to a period that never existed?
No, that is not the question on the ballot paper, and you know it wasn't. The question on the ballot paper was, do you wish the United Kingdom to remain in the European Union?
Yes.
That was the question.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it was.
Correct.
And prior to that question being asked and us being given the choice to answer it, we had about 9 months of pontificating by a load of people, shall we say.
Yes.
On all sides. Now, I'd like to put
almost all of them were ignored because people preferred
both sides.
Not really. Most of the people that had an input into the economic well-being of this country wanted us to stay. That's undeniable.
Okay, well, hang on a second. First of all, Nick, we haven't left yet,
Exactly. Precisely. We haven't left yet, and we're already
and we have
between 15 and 20% poorer than we were before. We're not even out yet.
No, we're not. No, that's a big mistake that I heard you make. I was driving home and I heard you say that.
It's true.
Because the pound... Remember Harold Wilson back in the 70s when the pound was devalued? He went on the television and said, just because the pound is devalued, it doesn't mean you are now worse off.
Well, you are.
The pound... No, it isn't.
Unless, Stephen, you want to only survive on things that are made in this country.
No, it doesn't. It means that our imports are more expensive and our exports are less expensive.
Yes, but did you not hear what I just said? Exports are not up.
You have picked on, basically, first of all, you are using a far too short a period of time. You cannot judge the impact of any economic policy for a minimum of 18 months. Now, the pound dropped over a cliff. The pound dropped over a cliff at about 10 past midnight on the 24th of June when the Newcastle result came through. It has since recovered fractionally. Not by much, but a little.
Invisibly small amount.
The stock market, however, has continued to crash on.
But do you know why that is?
But I'd like to pull you up on another point.
But do you know why that is?
No.
You don't?
The point I'm trying to make, and you are very cleverly deflecting me from the point.
No, I'm not. You said that the point you're making is that the stock market has improved dramatically, and that is because the stock market, the FTSE 100, is made up of companies whose focus is external. They don't do the majority of their business within this country, even though they are part of the FTSE 100 in London. They're not focused inside. They're focused outside. And then the thought was that a crashed pound would improve the prospects of exporting companies.
It may well do so.
Well, in fact, it hasn't.
But the point I'm trying to make, Nick, is not that. The point I'm trying to make is that the question on the ballot paper was, do you wish the UK to remain or leave?
Exactly, and it might as well have been, would you like the contents of box A or box B? We're not going to tell you what's inside, but you just have to choose.
9 months to tell us that. They had not. All we heard from the Remain side, and I will say so from Leave as well, were lies. We had George Osborne telling us that there would have to be an emergency budget and that the country would basically, pensions would be slashed because we're leaving the EU. Osborne said that.
Well, don't you think that that's likely? Don't you think that it's likely, if the GDP is down significantly, that pensions will eventually be affected? I mean, how do pensions get paid if it's not from the money that is accrued by the government?
They haven't gone down. The point was made that there would be an emergency budget immediately
yet.
after.
You yourself said that you can't judge any economic effects within 18 months.
Economic data, then.
What?
You just agreed with me. The point I'm making is that we were not...
I haven't agreed with a single thing you've said so far.
We have not, at no time before that vote, did I ever hear the phrase soft Brexit, hard Brexit. I never heard that. It's only come about since the result. The point
that's because the question was too vague. It was actually meaningless. It was so vague. People didn't understand what they were voting for. They didn't. Do you think that people in this country really went to examine the economic consequences of their decision? No, Stephen. No, they didn't. They heard, let's take our country back, and thought, oh yeah, that's right. Let's take our country back. Same as the Americans with Donald Trump. They didn't do a cost-benefit analysis of being in and out of the EU. They don't even understand what the EU is. The amount of people that say, oh, it's an undemocratic organisation that is dictatorial and is telling us what to do against our wishes. The amount of people that say that, I'd say it's in the 90% of the callers that I get. They have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. People didn't examine the consequences and to test the words of experts. No, they did not. They heard, let's make our country great again, and they thought, oh yeah, that's right. Let's go back to when I was young and had a chance of having carnal relations, at least once for the rest of my life. That's what people voted for, to go back in time, when they were youthful and bendy. Thanks a lot, Stephen. 0345 6060 973. It's 11:30 on LBC. The news headlines with Paul Smith.
People are being warned to avoid beaches and keep doors and windows shut after an unknown haze drifted in off the Sussex coast. Up to 50 people have been reporting irritation to their eyes and throats. President Trump will visit Texas on Tuesday to see for himself the devastation caused by Hurricane Harvey. People trapped by rising floodwaters in the state are being told to stand on their roofs and wait for emergency services. 43 people have been arrested on the first day of the Notting Hill Carnival in West London. Tributes were paid to the victims of the Grenfell Tower fire. LBC weather: cloudy and windy in the far north and northwest overnight with some rain possible. Dry elsewhere with clear spells, a low of 11 degrees.
This is LBC.
At EDF Energy, we train smart, think smart, work smart and leave smart to ensure you're happy with your smart meter installation. Our smart meters provide accurate billing based on the energy you use, making meter reads and estimated bills a thing of the past. We're installing them in our customers' homes and we're in your area now. Take control of your energy. Claim your free smart meter today. Search EDF Energy Get Smart. Smart metering from EDF Energy. Works for me. Exclusions apply. For further details, search EDF Energy Get Smart.
Now let's get one thing straight. The Vauxhall Vivaro puts in a shift. It's a real van that doesn't flinch at a hefty load. Space to handle the big stuff with up to 8.6 cubic metres of vanliness. Bluetooth and USB connectivity and a range of efficient engines. In other words, it's a real van's van. It's...
Here you go, sir. Your hazelnut and caramel soy latte.
Oh, with sprinkles.
Certainly, sir.
Like I said, a real van's van.
Get van savvy with the Vauxhall Vivaro. Contact your Vauxhall retailer today for a quote.
New Sky Sports is here. So now all our Sky TV customers can get our brand new channel dedicated to the Premier League for £18 a month. With 126 live games and a new weeknight debate show. Exciting, eh, Gary? If you don't have Sky TV, bundles start from £22 a month. Search New Sky Sports today to get our new Premier League channel. Cancellation requires 31 days notice. New Sky TV customers, £20 setup fee, 18-month contract.
New Scientist Live, an exciting festival of ideas and discovery, returns this September with headline speakers Heston Blumenthal and Chris Packham. Taking place at London's Excel, the festival will feature over 120 inspirational talks, as well as 5 immersive zones where you can sequence your own DNA and explore the galaxy. New Scientist Live, the 28th of September until the 1st of October. To buy tickets and to get more information, go to lbc.co.uk.
Nick Abbott on LBC.
Ian Collins is off for the evening. I'm Nick Abbott. I'm sitting in for him. This is LBC. Let me read a couple of texted emails. Victoria texts, the main principles of the EU explain the crux of our scepticism in the UK. Free movement of goods, services and people is not a fluffy humanitarian venture. It's a capitalist one leading to greater exploitation. The Leave campaign should have been driven by a liberal agenda. Free movement of goods, services and people is not a fluffy humanitarian venture. Well, of course not. It was never sold as a fluffy humanitarian venture. It's a capitalist one. Well, yes, of course. But that's what the economy is based on, capitalist ideals. And it's not against the wishes of the people that it's a capitalist country. And as for the exploitation part, well, we've all been exploited. And that part is just getting worse, but it has nothing to do with the EU. It has nothing to do with the EU that people's wages in real terms have not gone up since the 1970s. We're all earning more or less the same. We've flatlined, apart from the top 10%, and particularly the top 0.1%. Their wages have skyrocketed, mostly because they get to set their own remuneration. It has nothing to do with the EU. Exploitation's got nothing to do with the European Union. That's us, that is. Pat emails, I'm an old Remainer born just after the war. There was still rationing then at infant school under There was still rationing then at infant school. Under 7s were smacked and shaken. there should be a comma or a full stop in there somewhere, but you figure that out yourself. Polio was rife. Later on, we had the 3-day week and astronomical mortgage rates. Not a past golden age. Is it just that the old Brexiteers have started to lose their memories? So that's the thing. Life used to be miserable. I mean, I only have experience from the 60s. I can't remember the 60s. I was too young at the time. But I remember the 70s. It was awful. Why in God's name would anybody want to go back to that? Meanwhile, here's a fellow that wants to go back to that. Chris says, the sooner this country returns to the 1950s way of life and regains sanity, the better off and happier we will all be. Much of it in capital letters with exclamations peppered through it like shotgun pellets. I hope you're being sarcastic. I suspect you're not. Now, the Daily Mail is one of those Brexiteer flag-waving newspapers that it just gets tedious on the subject because regardless of whatever the story is, it's let's make our country great again. So it must have hurt them considerably to have to give this information, that Tiffany & Company may move its hallmarking operation to Europe because of Brexit to avoid being caught up in potential trade disputes. Now, I know this sounds a bit arcane and left field, but stick with it for just a minute. It's feared that other major global brands may follow suit, which would cost millions of pounds and put hundreds of skilled UK jobs at risk, says the Daily Mail. For 700 years, Britain's hallmarks on precious metals such as platinum, gold and silver have reassured customers around the world that the jewellery that they are buying is of the correct purity and weight. But some EU countries, including France and Italy and Spain, may choose not to recognise British hallmarks after we leave the EU in 2019. Well, of course not. Why would they? It's not in their interests. Brexit is a disaster for British hallmarking, said Dr. Robert Organ, Deputy Warden at the Goldsmiths Company Assay Office in London. The Antiques Trade Gazette reported some of the largest global jewellery firms are preparing to switch their hallmarking from London to EU countries, such as the Netherlands, to maintain hallmarks recognised in the European Union. Now, several industry sources have told the Mail that Tiffany & Co. is one, planning to move its hallmarking operations from London to Amsterdam. One insider said Tiffany's is worried that it won't be able to sell items in places such as France and Spain if they play hardball after Brexit and do not recognise British hallmarks. Well, that's the nature of capitalism. We're not doing each other favours. Of course we're going to play hardball. That's business, that is. Another source involved in the transportation of high-value jewellery said that if Tiffany stops sending jewellery to be hallmarked in the UK, other big US brands will follow. It'll mean job losses at the assay offices and in the logistics chain. And a government spokesman said, our ambition is to work towards a future agreement with the EU, which includes securing the freest and most frictionless trade possible. Well, that's what being in the EU is. They'd get that by being inside the European Union, if that's what they want, the freest and most frictionless trade possible. But, you know, Fred and Ethel in Southend saw a bus with a lie about the NHS on it, so we're leaving. And you might think that who cares if Tiffany take their silver golf tees and their propelling pencils and swan off to the continent? It's hardly part of the weekly shop, unless you are a captain of industry or the highly paid chancellor of a university. But if jewellers start to pack up and leave, they would take about £6 billion of exports with them, not too far off the value of the British beverage industry. And that doesn't even include gold and silver. The value of gold that we export every year is about $16 billion, which makes us the 5th biggest exporter on Earth. And add that to the value of silver and jewellery combined, and it's an export market worth about $24 billion a year that we could kiss goodbye to. Still, at least we'll have our country back. 0345 6060 973. Let's have Lancashire. Annie.
Oh, hi, Nick.
Annie.
Goodness me, aren't people getting steamed up about what Labour have said today? All they've said is that, if it was up to Labour, which obviously isn't anyway at the moment, that they'd stay in the single market and the customs union during the transition period, not permanently. Anybody would think that...
Yes, but there was the indication that it might be permanent, depending on, how things go.
Well, different people have said different things about that, haven't they? I mean, I don't think Jeremy Corbyn's exactly said that.
Well, this is what Keir Starmer. I mean, it was Keir Starmer, the shadow Brexit secretary. This is, the story is mostly around what he was saying, and he said that the party intends to maintain membership of the single market beyond March 2019, offering a sort of clear alternative to the Conservative Brexit plans, which appear to be, I don't know, I don't really know what their plans are. I don't think Europe has any idea either. Starmer said, "We will always put jobs and the economy first," which seems to make perfect sense. How can anybody dispute that that's a good idea? Well, apparently 71% of the people that voted out, who are over the age of 65, they're not remotely interested in the economy or jobs.
No, well, I think that's because the 71% of those people must be comfortably off. I mean, anybody who's, I don't know, living on disability benefits or on a 0-hours contract and doesn't know from 1 week to the next how much money they're going to have, or people who are using food banks, I don't think they'd be, prepared to be worse off.
No, of course. But what's bizarre is that these old people, they must have kids, surely, and their kids must have their own children. So don't they care about anything?
It's bizarre. It's like, I don't know, it's like some weird sort of, I don't know how to describe it really.
It's like a cult.
Sort of
it's like a religious,
cult.
Maybe a virus.
Yeah,
okay.
Virus has got into their brains.
But I think it is like it's like a cult. And
it is.
It's like a religion, and that's partly why people are just so vehemently wedded to this idea of Brexit, because it's almost like God has spoken to them that the promised land is just over the next hill. All we have to do is extricate ourselves from this evil demonic presence on our borders and everything's going to be all right. And it is almost as though God has spoken to them.
Yeah, they just seem to be sort of quite without any reason particularly optimistic.
It's reason-free.
Yeah, nobody knows what's going to happen, really. And I do think we need a transition period, most definitely, because, I mean, they're never going to sort it out in 18 months. I mean, this government have wasted 6 months messing about having an unnecessary election that we didn't need, and then Mother Teresa's been swanning about in the Alps for a month.
Mystifying. How can you take a holiday at this juncture? I just don't get it.
Unbelievable, that long a holiday, anyway. I mean, and they haven't sorted out even the three most basic things that the EU wanted to sort out first, which was the position of EU citizens, both being able to stay here or on the continent, the divorce bill, and the Irish border. And they've got absolutely nowhere with any of those. And Brexit Bulldog is going off again tomorrow, David Davis, otherwise known as Brexit Bulldog on Dead Ringers. But, yeah, he's off again tomorrow. And they've just got nowhere so far. Absolutely nowhere. I mean, nothing has happened, has it?
Oh, well, apart from antagonising the people that we are desperate to do a deal with, which makes zero sense. I mean, if these are our best negotiators, we're in big trouble.
Well, definitely. And, so it's obviously going to need a transition period. We're not going to be able to do it within 18 months. I mean, it's so complicated anyway. And, we can't just crash out.
Theresa May's assertion that no deal is better than a bad deal is an asinine thing to say, because no deal is a bad deal. It's a catastrophic deal.
Well, I mean, the country would just, if we just sort of had no deal and just, I mean, just today I was listening to an Irish minister actually being interviewed on the BBC, and he was just talking about the stuff that goes backwards and forwards over the border between Ireland, between Northern Ireland and the Republic, and loads of things. They'll go backwards and forwards about 6 times before they're actually finished. I mean, even odd things like food products, because Ireland sends us a huge amount of agro-industrial products. I mean, particularly things like dairy products and, practically all the cheddar cheese and stuff like that.
They're big on pharmaceuticals as well.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, that was another thing. He did mention that as well, that they go backwards and forwards, and also backwards and forwards to Belgium for some reason. I'm not really sure. But anyway, yes, all sorts of stuff goes backwards and forwards. And plus, I mean, they do a huge amount of trade with us. So, but it's like that. It's going to be like that with all the countries in the EU that so many of our goods, they're not just sort of made here and finished, and then
people
off they go.
Don't seem to understand that. There is a perfect example that was spelled out in The Guardian about our car industry. And I'll come to that in just a second. But let's just remind ourselves where you started with what it is that the Labour Party are now saying, because people seem to be going completely flown off the handle. And again, you do get this feeling that it is almost like a religion for a lot of people, and their furious reaction is the same as if you tell them that their religion is stupid and there is no such thing as God. Speaking to The Guardian, Keir Starmer said, "We will always put jobs and the economy first. That means remaining in a form of customs union with the EU is a possible end destination for Labour. But if it makes sense for the benefit of us all, then how could anybody object to that?" But apparently you can.
Did he say a form of customs union?
Yes.
Yes. So that doesn't mean exactly what we've got now, but obviously they have got to work out some kind of a deal where goods and services can go backwards and forwards between us and Europe and over the Irish border and things without too much hassle. It would be ridiculous.
But moreover, without too much value or cost being added to the final product. I mean, who wants to be poorer? I just don't get it.
Exactly, and who wants lorries, sort of backed up about 50 miles from Dover, or having to be, or on the other side of the channel, having to go through ridiculous things about every item that's coming backwards and forwards. I mean, something's going to have to be worked out, and that's not going to be able to be done quickly, especially as they haven't even got the basic things, the three basic things that they said they were going to get sorted out fairly quickly.
It's absolutely it's absolutely impossible that we're going to come up with a comprehensive trade deal within 18 to unwind 40 odd years of enmeshment with the European Union in 18 months, or 15, or whatever it is now. It's just not going to happen.
No, it's not. And another thing that worries me as well is, and is a good thing that if we are having a transition period and free movement doesn't stop straight away, because I just don't know who they think is going to be working in our public services, in like the NHS and social care. And it's quite worrying that so many EU, people who were working here from the EU have gone back already.
Yeah, what you hear from them again and again is that they don't feel welcome here anymore. And you know what? We'll miss them when they're gone.
We certainly will. My local hospital will certainly miss them, because they've had real trouble recruiting nurses, and they've actually been recruiting from the EU recently. They were on Radio 4, actually. For some reason, they used Lancaster Hospital. And they just had not, there's so many unfilled nursing posts at the moment, something like 25,000.
Well, exactly right. And doctors as well. I mean, the dropout rate from medical students is abysmal in this country, and so the government has had to dredge foreign countries for our medical staff. And without them, if they don't feel welcome here anymore, well, I mean, how long does it take you to get an appointment with a hospital consultant at the moment?
A long time.
Yeah, months, exactly. Well, you could translate months into years. Annie, I'm going to have to go, but thanks for that. 0345 6060 973. So, just before the break, let me remind you what Labour are now saying. Keir Starmer, the shadow Brexit secretary, said, we will always put jobs and the economy first. That seems to make sense. Well, it makes sense to me, not to a lot of other people who just don't care. They are ideologically wedded to this notion of splitting from Europe, and they think it's, I don't know, it's the gate to the promised land, and they don't care how much pain other people have to go through so that they can get what they want. Starmer said that means remaining in a form of the customs union with the EU is a possible end destination for Labour. Labour would also leave open the option of the UK remaining a member of the customs union and the single market for good, beyond the end of the transitional period. Well, if it's for the benefit of us all, what's the problem? 0345 6060 973. Nick Abbot, LBC.
This is LBC.
At EDF Energy, we train smart, think smart, work smart and leave smart to ensure you're happy with your smart meter installation. Our smart meters provide accurate billing based on the energy you use, making meter reads and estimated bills a thing of the past.
We are the Smart Installation Society.
We're installing them in our customers' homes and we're in your area now. Take control of your energy. Claim your free smart meter today. Search EDF Energy Get Smart. Smart metering from EDF Energy. Works for me. Exclusions apply. For further details, search EDF Energy Get Smart.
You can earn more with a degree.
And you can get a degree in just 2 years with a course at GSM London.
Degrees are awarded by Plymouth University. And if you don't have a formal qualification, you can start on our foundation year.
Places are available for September at our Greenford and Greenwich campuses.
Enroll now. Text GSM to 66777.
Or visit gsmlondon.ac.uk.
GSM London.
Have bold dreams.
My heart is in my throat. I fidget my hands nervously. I try to catch my breath as I wait to find out the verdict.
I think your banana cake is beautiful.
The drama of the tent returns. The Great British Bake Off starts Tuesday at 8 on Channel 4.
Landlords, Direct Line guarantees to beat other insurers' renewal premiums for the same cover. Can your insurance do that? Switch to Direct Line Landlord. New customers only. Qualifying criteria apply. Underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
You could spend days driving round lots of car dealers to find your next car, or you could sort it in an afternoon at Big Motoring World. With up to 2,000 pre-owned BMWs, Mercedes, Audis and VWs in stock, you'll save time to put in some hard hours at the gym or just chill on the sofa with a controller. Big Motoring World. Open all bank holiday. See bigmotoringworld.co.uk.
Nick Abbott on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Now, the lady that I was just talking to was bringing up the possibility of the lorries being prevented from, the free movement of goods across countries, cross-country borders, and they'd be stacked up and waiting to go through customs and so on. And you might think, oh, well, so what? Well, now, this is instructive. This is a thing that I've been carrying around that the Guardian printed in March, and it gives you an idea about just one element of our manufacturing base, which is the car industry. It says if there's one anecdote that succinctly sums up the problems that Brexit and the threat of tariffs pose to the UK car industry, it's this: the story behind the crankshaft used in the BMW Mini, which crosses the Channel 3 times in a 2,000-mile journey before the finished car rolls off the production line. This is just one piece of the car. A cast of the raw crankshaft is made by a supplier based in France. From there, it's shipped to BMW's plant in Warwickshire, where it's drilled and milled into shape. And when that job's complete, each crankshaft is then sent back across the Channel to Munich, where it's inserted into the engine. And from Munich, it's back to the Mini plant in Oxford, where the engine is then married with the car. And if the car's to be sold on the continent, then the crankshaft inside the finished motor will cross the Channel for a 4th time. On average, just 41% of the parts used in a car assembled in the UK are actually produced in the UK. Bosses in the automotive industry are not just concerned about the impact of tariffs on vehicles made in the UK that are sold abroad, but on the parts used to make them and whether they'll be able to move those parts across the Channel quickly and affordably. The chief executive of the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders said there's hundreds and thousands of movements per car, which is not something that you would ordinarily think unless you knew something about the industry. But it's the same with all industry. He says anything that changes or puts barriers to that free flow of parts will have an effect. It is fundamental to the efficiency in this country. The speed, and this is the part about lorries being held up at borders, which you might not think would be such a big deal. It's just a mild irritation for lorry drivers, but it's not. The speed at which parts are moved from factory to factory is critical. Most car plants in Britain operate with what's known as just-in-time production. This involves components being added straight to the car when they arrive at the factory, rather than being stored in a warehouse. The system dramatically improves the productivity of the plant, but any interruption to supply can bring production to an immediate halt. Theresa May already warned that Britain is likely to leave the single market and the customs union as part of Brexit, meaning that free movement of goods could end. Existing trade deals between the EU and other countries include rules that products must have a certain proportion of parts built in their home market to avoid tariffs. For example, the EU's agreement with South Korea, 55% of parts in a car must be sourced from Europe to qualify for free trade. These rules are an issue for the UK industry because less than half of parts in cars assembled here are sourced here. Now, that's the sort of information that people should have known before they went to vote. But nobody was remotely interested because all they cared about was listening to people like Uncle Nige say that we must get our country back, which is utterly, completely meaningless. Here's a call in Marbella. Hey, what's the weather like there, Daniel?
It's raining.
Raining? I'm glad to hear
it's raining. Yeah, me too. Yeah, I'm a baby boomer and somebody you would probably regard as old. I also love Ealing comedies, but I'm also what the Brexiteers pathetically call a Ramona. And I'm very frustrated about the divisiveness that the whole Brexit conversation has caused in Britain, between old and young, north and south, middle class, working class, whatever you want to call it. I think it's very, very destructive. And I think the whole concept of Brexit was very ill-conceived and was just a plan for the Tories to survive.
Well, it was a plan for David Cameron to survive.
Well, he thought it was a plan for the Tories to survive because he felt that the UKIP vote was going to take away from the Tory vote, so therefore the Tories would be defeated.
Yeah, I'm sure that's some part of it, yeah.
Yeah, and also I think that free movement is a gift, not a curse. It's one of the great gifts that the EU has given us for British people to go and work and live in Europe, and the opposite as well.
I think that just the idea that arbitrary lines drawn on a map constitute impenetrable barriers that people cannot go across is, well, it's inhuman apart from anything else, and it seems such an ancient, outdated idea that is completely unsuited to the modern world.
Yeah, I mean, for me, freedom of movement is up there with free speech as one of the fundamental human rights, or rights that people should have, you know. And of course there are negatives to it, but I think the positives far outweigh the negatives. And I'm also very frustrated about the terminology that a lot of the Brexiteers use, or the will of the people. I mean, the majority of people actually didn't vote for Brexit.
That's true.
A small majority of people who voted for Brexit, but the majority of the people didn't vote for Brexit. And so the will of the people is something that's like a completely meaningless phrase.
Well, it's also insulting because you know and I know that the people who use that phrase, it's the will of the people, would refuse that it would be the will of the people if the result had gone the other way around. In fact, their leader, Nigel Farage, specifically said that, and he mentioned the numbers 48 to 52. He said if the result was 48% to 52%, then it would be unfinished business. That was his words. Now, what he thought at the time was that he was going to lose by 48 to 52, but because he won by 52 to 48, then suddenly it's finished business. So the two-facedness in this issue is it's just it leaves a nasty taste in the mouth.
Yeah, and also I believe he said, I might be wrong, but I believe he said there has to be a 75% majority in order for Brexit to happen. But anyway, of course, a majority, according to the statistics, whether they're right or not, I don't know, of older people voted for Brexit. There is a lot of older people who want to stay and who respect, who want to give the opportunity.
Well, all of the older people that are enjoying their retirement abroad, for a start. Here, Daniel, we're out of time. I'll let you go back to what sounds like a party. Thanks for that. 0345 6060 973. For Ian Collins, this is Nick Abbott on LBC.
On FM, online, on your mobile and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at midnight, an unknown chemical haze has swept over beaches in East Sussex, leaving dozens of people with sore eyes, throats and sickness. Emergency services warned residents to stay inside and close their windows and doors. Eastbourne's Hospital has set up a tent outside the main building for anyone with symptoms. Lila Charlton from the town and her 2-year-old daughter are there.
My eyes started watering, I was really stingy. But Poppy, because she's got asthma anyway, it affected her chest more than anything, didn't it? Hey?
The cloud blew in from the sea, but it's yet not known what it is. US President Trump has described Hurricane Harvey, which has left at least 2 people dead in Texas, as a once-in-a-500-year flood. It's been downgraded to a tropical storm, but it's caused severe flooding, and both major airports in Houston have been closed because of it. Governor Greg Abbott says people are being told to head for their rooftops to wait to be rescued.
They will have helicopters that can make roof rescues. I know that the state is sending helicopters to the region to assist in those. Before today, the state had already made multiple water rescues from helicopters, and we are prepared to continue that process.
The White House says Donald Trump will visit the area tomorrow. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn says he won't put a time limit on how long it should take for a transitional agreement for the UK to leave the EU. The shadow Brexit secretary says Labour is in favour of staying in the single market after Brexit in 2019. The body of a man's been found on a beach in South Wales. Police were called to the scene on Porthkelly Beach at around midday on Sunday. Officers say investigations are ongoing. A minute's silence has been held at the Notting Hill Carnival in memory of the victims of the Grenfell Tower disaster. Crowds turned out in the sunshine in West London for the annual event. Russell Conway is a property lawyer based in Notting Hill. He's told LBC despite the fire, it's only right the carnival went ahead.
I think we all need a bit more joy in our lives, and certainly the people of Notting Hill are going to relish the fun and celebration that goes with carnival, and I think those who were misguided enough to try to stop that celebration were very quick to stop their feelings that it shouldn't go ahead.
Police say 43 people have been arrested on day one, 29 of which for drugs offences. Arsenal's start to the season's just become a whole lot worse after a 4-0 thumping at Liverpool. Arsene Wenger's side didn't manage a shot on target at Anfield. The manager called it disastrous. LBC weather: cloudy and windy for the far north and northwest of Scotland, with some rain overnight. Dry elsewhere with clear spells, but feeling quite muggy in the southeast. A low of 11 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Paul Smith.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Abbott.
I'll get back to your calls in just a minute, but let me insert something else into the debate, because Theresa May, but this is an aside, Theresa May is said to have revealed the date that she's going to quit as Prime Minister, giving herself 2 years to see Brexit through first. Well, that's not going to happen. Not in 2 years. She has... The Mail is reported... The Mail on Sunday, this, is reporting that she has chosen Friday, August the 30th, 2019, as the day that she will step down from 10 Downing Street. Meaning she is just made herself a lame duck Prime Minister. It comes amid a major charm offensive by Theresa May in a bid to win the support of her MPs and avoid an awkward leadership challenge. Good luck with that. The PM has been inviting groups of 15 Tories to her official Chequers country residence, handing them Prosecco and homemade chocolates at the door as they arrive. This is according to The Mirror, as reported in the Mail. It's like Chinese whispers. Already more than a dozen Conservative politicians are said to have pledged to sign a letter calling for Mrs May to step down, although that falls far short of the 48 signatures needed to trigger a new leadership vote. They're like sharks. They just snap at something in the water that is leaking blood, but are fearful of mounting a full-on attack. One Tory MP said it's clear she won't lead us into another election and will be gone by September 2019. She invited MPs to checkers to ensure that there isn't a leadership contest in the meantime, said one Tory MP, unnamed. But Downing Street has poured cold water on the report, saying that we have hit peak silly season. And you know it's... well, there's something to be said that you never know it's true until the government denies it. Well, we'll find out, I suppose. But one thing that she did do today is launch an outspoken attack on fat cat bosses and accuse them of wrecking Britain's social fabric, which is curious coming from the leader of a political party that seems to have historically been an enabler in this regard. She announced in the Mail new moves to prevent greedy company chiefs paying themselves millions of pounds more than they're worth, and says that these moves are vital to stop a crisis of confidence in big business. And here's what she plans. Under Theresa May's reforms, if 1 in 5 shareholders complains about fat cat pay deals, or executives who earn hundreds of times the amount of ordinary workers on the same company payroll, if that happens, the punishment will be being named in a public register. That'll teach them. Mrs May invokes the words of former Tory Prime Minister Sir Edward Heath, who denounced ruthless 1970s tycoon Tiny Rowland as the unacceptable face of capitalism. That's what the Conservative Party said in 1970s. They coined that phrase, the unacceptable face of capitalism, and since then absolutely nothing has been done about it. In fact, it's got exponentially worse. In 1950, the ratio of CEO pay to regular employees' salary was 50-1, which is a large gap. 50 times the salary of the averagely paid person in a FTSE 100 company. That's in 1950. Since then, it's gone up by 1,000%, while the real world pay of the bottom 90% has not gone up at all. So this so-called government crackdown faces opposition, even something as mild as that, which it doesn't even amount to a slap on the wrist. But even that faces opposition from some Tories who claim that the PM is flirting with anti-capitalism. Meanwhile, a Daily Mail investigation exposes the lifestyle of Britain's burgeoning breed of fat cat bosses. There's this fella called Peter Crook. That's his name. I'll say no more about it. Peter Crook, the discredited boss of... Oh, God, the lights have gone out. Wait a minute. Just as I was in the middle of a piece. Hang on. To wave my arms in the air to make sure that the thing in the ceiling knows that there's somebody in here. Where was I? Peter Crook, the discredited boss of Provident Financial, earned more than £40 million in 10 years, selling high-interest loans to the poor and the needy. In the last decade alone, Mr. Crook pocketed £6.3 million in pay and bonuses, more than the chief executives of the 4 big banks, HSBC, Barclays, Lloyds and RBS, which were long regarded as the epitome of excess pay. He was forced out after his firm stunned the city last week by revealing its lending business was in chaos and was being investigated by regulators. £1.7 billion was wiped off that company's market value in one day. A record fall of 66% of its value. The city has never seen anything like it. And this was as a result of Mr. Crook's botched reorganisation of the 137-year-old lender. You know, that's why he was earning the big money, because of his expertise. And Theresa May says the excesses and irresponsibility of a minority of grasping big business moguls threaten to undermine trust in free enterprise and damages the social fabric of our country. And yet it's all just talk. You know, she promised us more than this. What she's proposing today is a much slimmed-down version of wider curbs on boardrooms promised by Theresa May in the aftermath of the Philip Green BHS pension scandal. Philip Hammond vetoed putting workers' representatives on boards, and Theresa May ditched moves to let shareholders vote on bosses' pay. So what's going to happen now is, if 1 in 5 shareholders complains about the fat cat pay deals, that fat cat will be named in a public register, and that's it. And in place of her earlier plans to force companies to give workers a seat on the board, now there's just a measure to instruct firms to give them a louder voice, which can still be completely ignored. Companies would be expected to have either an employee advisory panel or a dedicated board member or an employee representative on their board, said Mrs May. Expected to, as in it's not government policy. They're just asking whether they wouldn't mind doing that. Whatever you call them, those the staff representatives will still be ignored and will be fearful of speaking out, concerned that they might be fired. But even these watered-down proposals, which don't seem to amount to anything at all, face criticism from some Conservatives. Tory MP George Freeman, a former head of the No. 10 policy unit, accused Mrs May of flirting with anti-capitalism. But that's nonsense. It's the people at the top who are anti-capitalist. They aren't being rewarded for great performance. They're being rewarded, as they are, because they set their own pay in the manner of dictators. There's nothing capitalistic about it. And a wider Mail on Sunday investigation into the pay of some of Britain's wealthiest FTSE bosses has shown how some have continued to get richer despite a lacklustre or often abysmal performance by their companies that they're running, and a rebellion among shareholders. Their pay keeps going up regardless of their performance. What's capitalistic about that? It has nothing to do with capitalism. John Fallon, chief executive of publishing giant Pearson, and Bob Dudley of BP have received huge pay hikes in recent years at the same time as their companies posted multi-billion-pound losses. Where's the sense in that? So it's as though capitalism has been hijacked by the people at the very, very top. I suppose you would ask yourself, if you could set your own pay, what would you give yourself? A vast amount. Am I right? We look in the mirror and we think that we are exceptional. Everybody on earth thinks that they're exceptional. We'd all give ourselves £40 million a year because we're worth it in our own eyes. The reason that we don't is because we can't. And the reason that those people do is because they can. But capitalism has got nothing to do with it. 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850. Email nick@lbc.co.uk. And if you're on Twitter, it's @LBC.
This is LBC.
At John Lewis, we've got everything they need to get ready to go to university, including the HP Pavilion X360 convertible laptop. Light, fast and portable, it's great for taking notes in lectures. And with a powerful Intel Core i5 processor and long battery life, it's perfect for catching up on those box sets too. With a 3-year guarantee included on all Windows laptops until the 31st of August, you can rest assured they'll be covered whatever happens. Visit us in store or online for more details.
Worst nightmare. Avoid like the plague.
Those aren't review centre comments for Wheels for Sure. These are
great service, a good company, happy customer.
At Wheels for Sure, we don't think your credit history should affect the way you're treated in the here and now. So we could lease you a brand new car for 3 years. We accept 95% of applicants once we know you can afford the initial rental and monthly payments. And if your company pays a car allowance, we'll automatically accept you. Change your life at wheelsforsure.com. Rated 4.9 9 out of 5 on Review Centre. Because when life happens, we're here for sure.
Wheels for Sure is FCA regulated. T's and C's apply.
Hello to summer parties and barbecues. Weekends away, just you two. Say hello to something new today at helloyoudating.com.
Another one drives a duster.
Another one drives a duster.
Another one drives a duster.
Hey, why don't we get one too?
Another one drives a duster.
The Dacia Duster SUV starting from just $9,495 with over 100,000 UK customers and fantastic owner reviews on our website. Isn't it time you got in on the action? Dacia, you do the maths.
Nick Abbott on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Let's have a call in Chigwell. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, good morning. I was just listening to all the claptrap that you're going on about the doom and gloom when we leave Europe. Now, I've been alive when we had the European and when we didn't have the European Union, and I'm not one of the old fuddy-dudders of 75 years old either. I think that the newbies of the world have not experienced what it was like outside the Union, so they're scared of change.
Everybody is scared of change. Nobody likes change.
That's correct. With regards
well,
to...
can you remind us then, because, you know, a lot of us didn't live through those golden halcyon days, what was life like before the European Union?
It wasn't all peaches and cream, but we had the choice of who we wanted to sell to. If you have a think about it,
we still have a choice of who we want to sell to.
Market of Europe of 550 million people, which we can have so-called free trade with.
Yeah.
However, we forget about the 2.4 billion people that we are not trading with, for example, in the Commonwealth.
Well, we are trading with them. We are trading with them.
No, we actually had restrictions on who we can freely trade with, and have to have a permission to have each individual deal with Europe.
Well, permission is an odd word to use in that regard, because it implies that we have no say in the matter.
We haven't got complete say. We still have to get permission, which without Brexit, with Brexit being in force, we can choose who we want to trade with. Also,
yes, but Andrew, who do we want to trade with? Which trading body would be most beneficial for us in this country to trade with? Obviously, it's the European Union, being the biggest free trade market in the world, and it's right there. We could spit.
Do you know the fastest growing areas of export in the UK? What countries would you say they would be to?
I don't know, Andrew. What is this, 20 questions? Tell me.
Well, you're asking me. I'm asking you. There was a report out by the Financial Times in March. The fastest growing areas of exports for Britain are South Korea, Turkey, Saudi Arabia,
but
Poland.
Fastest growing is a meaningless statistic, Andrew, as you know, because it doesn't mean any. The actual value is the thing, not how fast it's growing. South Korea.
Yeah, South Korea.
What do we make that the South Koreans are so desperate to get from us that we don't sell them already?
I would have to go and do more research. This is only
but we're within the EU. Andrew, you've just shot your own argument in the foot. We're within the EU now, and according to you, we have to have permission to be able to sell to countries like South Korea. But by your own admission, that is that our trade with them is increasing exponentially. So what's the problem?
Because we are only allowed to have certain trading agreements with them within the EU.
But what do we produce that we are unable to sell them now?
Let's have a look at what we have there. We're talking about military. We're talking about technological with computers.
Yeah. Well, we sell them those things. You're telling me that we're selling them those things already.
We are selling them, and they are growing at the moment. However, there are certain items, there are certain agreements which restrict us selling them, and also we have to have tariffs in place with these people to trade with them, which are set by the EU. Without the EU, you won't have to have the tariffs will not have to be in place.
So you're telling me that it would be beneficial for the economy of this country to cease trading with Europe and concentrate on South Korea?
No. You see, you are the typical person that has to go to extremes. We're not talking about extremes. We're not talking about ceasing trade with Europe.
All right, well, let me rephrase it. You're saying that it would be better to trade with Europe but with tariffs in order to have free trade with South Korea. That is a more accurate description of what you're saying.
Not at all.
Well, it absolutely is. That's what you're telling me.
No, because what you're doing is you are guessing that all these massive tariffs are going to go in place. What you're not mentioning is that the majority of, for example, Mercedes, on their production, go to Britain. We are the highest exporter, apart from the USA, the highest exported country of Mercedes. Now, do you really think that Angela Merkel is going to say, I'm sorry, we're putting trade tariffs in, and allow their own Mercedes to be affected by trade tariffs?
We're not negotiating with Mercedes. We're negotiating with EU trade negotiators. The two are completely different.
And the major players of the EU trade negotiators would be people like France and Germany. They are the people that have most influence, and they also have self-interest to not affect their own industry.
Yes, but this implies that we are as important to them as they are to us, and that's not true. You must know that.
Europe exports more to us than we export to Europe.
Oh, please, Andrew. But as a percentage of their GDP, we are an insignificant destination for their exports, whereas something of the order of 50% of our exports go to Europe.
It's actually 44%.
Well, about 50.
It used to be 57%. However, that has been coming down within the last 20 years.
All right, well, if you want to be precise about it and pedantic, 44% of UK exports in goods and services went to other countries in the EU. 44%. OK, it's about 50, but if you want to be precise, it's 44%. 8% of EU exports come to us. 44% of our exports go to the EU. Only 8% of EU exports come to us. Therefore, it's not an equivalency. They are much more important to us than we are to them, obviously.
You're saying that because we are not as important to Angela Merkel with Mercedes or BMW or Volvo, and the exports that will ultimately vastly affect the major countries of Europe, they don't mind.
No, it's not vast. It's 3%. The EU exports 3% of its GDP to us. 3%. Otherwise known as relatively insignificant. I mean, nobody wants to lose 3% of their wealth, apart from 71% of the people that voted to leave the EU. Apparently they don't care. And I suggest that because of that very fact, we shouldn't be listening to them. But 13% of our GDP is dependent on exporting goods and services to the EU. The EU exports just 3% of its GDP to us. Therefore, to suggest that we have them over a barrel because we make some Mercedes here is just ridiculous. But thanks for the call, Andrew. Nice try. Joyce emails, I'm 81 and I voted to stay in the EU. Please stop saying that we all voted to leave. Before the vote, I said that the over 75s should not have been allowed to take part. But then younger people do not seem to be interested in their future. Why? Well, it's not entirely true that they're not interested in their future. They seem very exercised about their future. And they did go out to vote in large numbers, just not large enough. Plus, they didn't suspect that the older generation would do that to them. Young people didn't really think that this was going to happen. I suppose perhaps that they'd been too protected by their parents. and wrapped in a cotton wool. Nothing bad will ever happen to you, but I suppose that's just the nature of being young. Kate emails, maybe May was just using up all her allocated holiday days before she leaves her job. It does seem amazing that the leader of a country can enjoy so many holidays. I mean, I know Donald Trump does, but, he's a special and unique case. But Theresa May seems to be forever on holiday. The first thing that she did when she took over the leadership of this country was to immediately go on holiday. That's absolutely incredible to me. Who starts a job by saying, I'm going on holiday? We do live in weird, strange and bizarre times. There's no doubt about that. But, ain't it interesting? Steve says, I think the powers that be, ours and the EU, have already decided the outcome. We'll be in EFTA, like Switzerland, with most of the EU stuff retained, while technically we'll have left. The politicians and their mates will be the winners, whatever, says Steve in Winchester. Well, the politicians and their mates will be all right regardless, I'm sure. And I'll restate my case. I'll be willing to put money on it. Whatever happens, it will be sold to us as having left the EU. But no one will notice the difference. Everything will still be the same. I hate to break the news to you, but you're going to continue being surrounded by people with funny accents, doing all the jobs that we either don't want to do or can't do. Because either we just don't want to do those dirty fingernail jobs. Why would you? Why would you want to stand in a field all day, bent over double under a polytunnel, picking tomatoes off the vine? Why would anybody want to do that for 12, 15 hours a day for 30 quid? Why would we be trying to persuade British people to do that when they're too busy doing other better paid jobs? So we do need those people coming over. If we didn't, there would be a higher unemployment level in this country, but as we have full employment, it just seems undeniable that we need them. Unless you don't mind companies closing and the high street being further decimated and us all being considerably poorer. And apparently there are a large number of people who don't mind that. It just seems bizarre to me. East Grinstead, hello Adrian.
Hi there. Yeah, I think, by the way, you talked about Theresa May and fat cats. I think you've just fallen for one of her dead cat ploys. She throws something stupid out to try and take the issue off Brexit. I would suggest that the woman is both intellectually, politically and morally wrong for the job that she's allegedly trying to do. The car industry, as you say, is an enormous case in point. But let me just bring up one point that nobody seems to be talking about. They all talk about a nice, smooth transition period, but we still they don't say we're going to end up in a different place. So instead of driving off a cliff and falling onto the rocks below, we're going to slide down a gentle slope onto the rocks below. And of course, as you rightly say, the car industry would probably pack its bags and leave, because it exports about 80% to all the Japanese factories, export about 80% to Europe. The other thing we don't hear is that after the 19th, if we are out, they can change any rule they like. Any deal they've done with us, they could change because they own the club. So they can say, from now on, we will not allow any cars to be built in Britain to send to us. Of course, they wouldn't say that, but they could. Or they could say,
they already have the rule in place that in order to be tariff-free, 55% of a finished car has to have been made within the EU. But if we're out of the EU...
well, they could up that if they wanted to 90%. In other words, what I'm trying to say to you is, once you're out of the club, you have no say in the rules. They could simply say, from now on, we will refuse to accept any cars from Britain because we feel like it, and that's up to them. They could do it if they wanted to. So once you're out of the club, you have no say at all in the rules. I also wanted to say, by the way, can't people hear the jobs just walking out of the country now? Can't people hear the banking jobs going? And by the way, as well, in terms of us needing people, we know we need people for the health service. I know for a fact that the government is looking to bring in teachers from overseas because we can't get enough teachers to do the job. So there's all sorts of jobs that we can't get the Brits to do. And without teachers, where are your youth headed? So
the feeling that I'm getting from people who are insistent on Brexit is they don't care.
Well, they don't. They certainly don't understand. I mean, one thing that's pretty obvious, by the way. And I remember the wonderful Mr. Nigel Farage a while ago saying that over a period of time, about 55 decisions went against us in the European Court of Justice. And 72, he said, by the way. The FT guy did an analysis and said, that's right, it's actually 55 decisions went against us. However, 2,500 decisions went in the way that we wanted them to do. And if you were dealing with 27 people in a partnership, and you got 98% of the decisions went your way, you'd say that was a pretty good deal normally.
But these aren't normal times, though, Adrian. I'm going to have to leave it there because I'm past the break, but thanks for that. 0345 6060 973. It's just past 12:30. The news headlines on LBC with Paul Smith.
Hundreds of people have had to be evacuated from a stretch of coastline in East Sussex after a chemical haze. Emergency services say at least 50 people have been left with streaming eyes, sore throats and vomiting. The governor of Texas says new tornado warnings are expected to be issued in the already hit state following Hurricane Harvey. So far, 250 roads have closed and both airports in Houston are shut. Tributes have been paid to the 80 people confirmed dead in the Grenfell Tower fire at the Notting Hill Carnival. Scotland Yard says they've made 43 arrests on day one. LBC weather: cloudy and windy in the far north and west with some rain possible overnight. Dry elsewhere with clear spells, a low of 11 degrees.
This is LBC.
Hello to summer parties and barbecues. Weekends away, just you two. Say hello to something new today at helloyoudating.com.
When you need more
From
space.
Global Newsroom, I'm Paul
Think
Smith.
creatively. What could you use a log cabin for? A studio? A home office? A den for the kids? Creative Living will design and build a log cabin to suit your needs, even taking care of electricity and climate control. See for yourself at our 3 large cabin display villages in Surrey. Find out where at creativelivingcabins.co.uk.
Your own log cabin, handcrafted, the creative living way.
Relax. It's Trust a Trader. You pop in your postcode and find great tradespeople right on your doorstep. Visit trustatrader.com.
Hurry into Homebase for unmissable bank holiday deals. Right now, get Crown 2.5 litre standard coloured emulsion, just 2 for £22. Excludes Pure Brilliant White. Homebase, always low prices.
If you own a Swiss watch and it's time to sell it, speak to watches.co.uk. The whole process runs like clockwork. Rolex, Patek Philippe, Omega and more. It only takes a couple of ticks and we pay immediately. Or if you just fancy a change, we could take yours in part exchange. From time on your hands to money in your pocket, it couldn't be easier with watches.co.uk. The pre-owned Swiss watch specialist.
Car Giant has up to 10,000 cars in stock, all priced low to sell fast.
It's how London buys its cars. Car Giant.
Nick Abbott on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
That last fellow was right about jobs in the city. Of course, we are disproportionately dependent on people in the finance racket. This was about a month or so ago. The city section of the Evening Standard reported that up to 70,000 city jobs could be lost in what they called the catastrophic event that Britain crashed out of the single market when it leaves the EU. A major report warns. The Centre for London think tank called for Mayor Sadiq Khan to be given a major role in EU negotiations to help mitigate the risk of the capital losing its creative edge and variety after Brexit. 1-year city maker visas should be launched in London, they say, to allow EU citizens to come and live in the capital for a year while looking for work or start-up opportunities, the report has suggested. Which would give them more freedom to come here than they do now. Because if somebody from the EU comes to this country and they don't find work within 3 months, then we have the ability to send them back to where they came from. So this think tank is suggesting making it easier for people to come here, not more difficult. It warned that while London is better equipped than some other parts of the UK to weather the risks of Brexit because of its long-standing ties with other major European cities, it's also more exposed in other ways. They say our universities, hotels, restaurants, offices and building sites are powered by students and workers from across the EU to a far greater extent than the rest of the country. And when London catches an economic cold, so the rest of the country falls flat on its face. Because, like it or not, here's where most of the money gets made. It says, falling out of the single market without a comprehensive trade deal or adequate transitional arrangements would be catastrophic for many London businesses. But there's a large number of people in the country that don't really seem to care whether there's a catastrophe or not. They're just so wedded to this idea that life is going to be better outside the EU that are based on no information of any kind, that they just don't seem to care, which is just an extraordinary thing, that the country is following people who don't care where we're going. We do really live in bizarre times. Dan texts, Britain must work hard to reshape and in some respects rebalance her economy after Brexit. Rocky roads may follow in the short term, but there is much opportunity. Education, advanced engineering, the digitalisation of the banking industry and farming and fishing will play a bigger part in the years that follow. Let's negotiate, cooperate where appropriate and move forwards. Yeah, I entirely agree. But it doesn't seem to be moving forwards, though. Closing ourselves off from the biggest free market in the world seems to be the opposite of moving forwards. It just seems to be making life difficult for ourselves. Why do you want to make life difficult for us, you Brexiteers? How much evidence would make you change your mind? I think it is, in that regard, like a religion. It's evidence. It's an evidence-free zone. Nobody's interested in evidence. It's just a belief system. Farnham, hello, Sam.
Hi, Nick.
Sam.
I think overturning a referendum decision is dangerous because it goes against the will of the people.
Oh, God, here we go. The will of the people. It's not the will of the people.
Absolutely, against the will of the people.
Well,
this was an agreed referendum on which basis Cameron was elected.
Wrong. It's just incorrect. Can we stop saying the will of the people? The will of the people is for the country to become poorer and for people to lose their jobs. Well, if that is the will of the people, we should stop listening to the people, because the people don't know what they're talking about. I'm just so over that phrase. I just can't stand it anymore. The will of the people. As though 100% of the population is all pulling in the same direction. No, we're not. It was just over half of about 70%, which is about 35-37% of the people. And 35-37% of, and almost 100% of those 37% base their decision on no information of any kind whatsoever. They saw a lie on the side of the bus about £350 million a week, and they thought, gosh, that sounds like a lot of money, let's have some of that. Or they heard Nigel Farage say we must take our country back. Or we must extricate ourselves from this undemocratic, evil institution. People thought, oh, yeah, that's right. So it's not the will of the people. A lot of people just made a decision based on misinformation. So it's and if that is the will of 37% of the population, well, and the vast majority of them don't mind if the economic consequences are disastrous, then we should stop listening to those people. Who cares what they think? Wiser minds should take control, because this is ludicrous. Will of the people. Come on, Sam. 0345 6060 973. Let's have Catford. Hello, Stephen.
Hi, Nick. Yeah, it's. I think I've said this to you before, but if you base a decision on emotion and nostalgia and untruths,
then it should be dismissed.
then it should be dismissed, and we should go back to the drawing board, and we should have a rethink.
I mean, if those people that keep banging on about the will of the people are so confident, then let's have another vote and see how it turns out. Because that was the position of the people that wanted us to leave. That if it was 48 to 52, we'd have to have another vote. That's what Nigel Farage said.
He did. Also, insurrection, I think he might have muttered at some stage. But, I mean, I've been at a couple of... Honestly, I will get to the point. I've been at a couple of family functions recently. One was... My father was in the army, and there was a sort of, what do they call it, get-together. He's dead now, but some of his old comrades are still about, and I was invited, so I went along. And all of them seem to want to talk about Brexit. They're all about 80 now, they're all getting on a bit. And they all said... they knew me as a little boy running around in the sergeant's mess, blah, 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 blah. But they all seem to be wallowing in this idea that now they actually said they've got their country back. Now we don't have to kowtow to Germany.
Yeah, now we're going to really start winning.
Yeah, and I thought, I respect them, but it was almost universal. And I don't know, it just disappointed me a bit. I thought one of you could have actually thought about this.
It sounds like they're still fighting World War II.
Yeah, it was. That's what it was, and it kind of depressed me a little bit. And I don't know. That's why we fought World War II, surely, in order to stop World War II happening again, and
there's a certain age of a person, and then I know this from my dad, that they're just still wallowing in the glory of World War II. When bombs were falling from the sky, when we were happy and we were all together and fighting against a common foe, and they just desperately want that time back, which is insane.
Yeah. And I don't know, it's such a... Richard Dawkins is probably he's got the biggest brain on the planet, and even he said, I don't get this, why would I be given a vote on something that's
so complicated? Exactly.
Yeah. So I trundled along to my little school and smelt the plimp soles and voted to remain.
And so did I, and I was full of just as little information as everybody else. I mean, I don't know anything about anything, just like anybody else doesn't. But at least I know enough to know that I don't know anything. But there's a vast number of people who don't know anything, and they don't know anything.
But they must be so disappointed and so sort of distraught because everything. It's not going well. It's not going... We're not a free country anymore because you can't be. There is no such thing. We're all bound together, I don't know. We're not going to be Rule Britannia and look at us.
The map is not going to return to the colour pink. Those days are long gone. We've just got to get over the notion of British exceptionalism. We're just a tax haven off the coast of Europe that also does a nice line in weapons of mass destruction. That's what we do for a living.
I mean, I think we're a beautiful country with a great history. We've got a fantastic heritage. We've got lovely poets and musicians and
it's just
writers.
shame about that mist off Bournemouth. Other than that.
Yeah. And so why can't we just accept that we're not a great, great in
Well, I think that's part of it. People just don't want to accept that. They're not prepared to deal with our diminished place in the world. I think that's partly why we cling desperately onto this nonsense of keeping a nuclear deterrent when we can't afford to operate on our on people's knees and hips and eyes for lack of money, and yet we're desperately clinging to this stupid weapon of mass destruction that we'll never ever use just because it keeps us big. It keeps us sitting at the top table with the big boys, and I think that's part of it. It's that there is a refusal to accept that we're not the great British Empire anymore. We're just a small country that does banking for a living.
Well, a medium-sized country with a fantastic so-called, sorry about this, soft power. We have huge. I mean, everyone knows all the bands, you know, from the 60s and the 70s.
Oh, we punch above our weight artistically, no doubt about that.
And that's fine with me. I don't hate my country. I don't think I live in a bad. I think I live in a great country, but I don't care if you know we're the big cheese with whoever's the president. Oh God, not this president! Please don't even mention the name. I don't care. I just want to be a nice little European country. You know that is. I don't want to be a superpower.
Well, you don't have to worry about that, Stephen. That's not in our future. But thanks. I've got to go. The notion that now the government of the day is going to unhinderedly take decisions about the direction of the country, and the people who are poor now, because it is primarily the people that were poor that voted out. People that are poor think that they are suddenly going to become richer because of that. Well, you haven't been paying attention. That ain't going to happen. But I think that's what they're holding out for. That suddenly it's all going to be about them. That the government will finally, having unshackled themselves from the evil EU, they'll be able to concentrate on improving the lives of the poor. Well, what in history leads you to that conclusion? You're dreaming. If anything, everything that I've seen from the decisions that have come from the EU, it's the EU that seem to be more interested in elevating the lives of the less well-off than any government of this country, in my living memory, from Thatcher onwards. The opposite seems to be true. Well, the opposite is what has happened. There's no doubt about that. Since Thatcher on, that 90% of the population of this country have not had a pay rise in real terms. We're all just as poor as we were then. The top 0.1%, they've done fantastically well, and it had nothing to do with the EU. 0345 6060 973, Nick Abbot, LBC.
Coming up at 1 on LBC, Darren Adam.
Jurors who sat on a criminal trial for a year and a half have told how they've struggled to return to normal life. What's your experience of being on a jury?
Darren Adam on LBC.
At More Than, we've learned that understanding your pet is tricky. For example, actually means my litter tray, my poo, give it back. It's even harder to understand them when they're sick. So More Than Pet Insurance comes with VetPhone, a 24/7 free-to-call health advice line. Plus, new customers get 25% off online now. We do more than.
I can't believe it. This is amazing. Thank you, universe.
Dave, it's just a shopping trolley.
It already had £1 in it.
That's what we call one of life's small victories. And here's another. Get a Vauxhall Astra SRI for just $215 a month, plus advance rental. Vauxhall, isn't life brilliant? Search small victories. Personal contract hire. Advance rental of $4945. 35 monthly rentals of $215. Excess miles over contracted mileage of 24,000 over 36 months, charged at 11 pence per mile. You will not own the car. T's and C's apply. Order by 2nd October 2017.
Moving house, nightmare. I need a plasterer, plumber, electrician, builder, painter, locksmith, gardener, and somebody to move my valuables, the drinks trolley. Relax, relax. It's Trust a Trader. They have all the tradespeople you can think of, reputable and reviewed, so you always get a job well done. Well done me, I say, for getting it all sorted. I shall reward myself with a cheeky tipple from the trolley. Chin chin, pass me the gin. Visit trustatrader.com.
This is LBC with Nick Abbott. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850.
Just as an example of, and I do get that idea that the people from the poorer end of the scale who overwhelmingly voted for Brexit think that their time is going to come, that finally they're going to be paid attention to, and it's almost like winning the lottery. That's the sense that I get. They're like they just won a huge prize. Oh, God, the lights have gone out again. That was quick. It seemed only like 5 minutes ago that I had to dance around and convince the thing in the ceiling that there's actually somebody in here. Here's an indication, and this has nothing to do with the EU. This is the government of the day. This is an indication of where their focus lies. This is from April, when the George Osborne's budget came into effect. The richest will reap 80% of the rewards from the tax and benefit changes that came into effect in April of this year. 80%. While the poorest will become worse off, according to detailed analysis by the Resolution Foundation. The think tank's research shows that the effect of the £2 billion of income tax cuts and more than £1 billion of welfare cuts would add up to a huge transfer of wealth from low and middle income households to richer ones. I think the idea that a British government will concentrate its efforts on improving the lives of the poor, you're deluding yourselves. That's not going to happen. When in history, in recent history, has that ever happened? The reforms run directly contrary to the political mantra of Theresa May, who said she wants to govern in the interests of everyone and not just the privileged few. And it's one of those I'm gonnas. Now, I don't know whether she is just being stymied by the people around her, or whether it's just something that you say over and over again, and if you repeat it enough, people start to believe it. But don't listen to what their politicians say. Watch what they do. 80% of the rewards from the tax and benefit changes that came into effect in April this year went to the richest, and the poorest became worse off. And that has nothing to do with the EU at all. Hendon. Hello, David.
Hi, good evening, Nick. How are you?
Good.
I guess I'm one of those guys in the middle because, first of all, I didn't vote. I didn't vote because I called the shots and I didn't want to be part of something that I thought was utterly ridiculous. But at the same time, I'm not convinced that it's all doom and gloom. And I get the anger as to why the poor people, or you call them the poor people, or the lower class or whatever, voted out. But I don't think it's because so much that they wanted to become millionaires overnight. I think they were fed up, from what I get from the people I've spoken to. They were fed up of all their monies going over to Europe and they're not getting any rewards or anything back from it.
But that's not true, though.
It's a mindset. I'm not saying that was the correct. I'm just saying that's the mindset of the opinion that I was
getting. Right, so they made their decision based on misinformation and lies.
And anger, absolutely, 100%. But I have a couple of other points. You know, what do we have to offer Europe? I think it's a known fact that our security services outside of the USA are second to none, and that you never see a French police officer or a German police officer or a Polish police officer on British soil, but it's often the case where Scotland Yard is asked by other nations in Europe to come and help with their problems. It's often the case where we're...
I don't know. What problems are we helping Germany with? What problems are our police force helping Germany with?
Well, let's look at the catastrophes that they had in Paris. And when they had the Paris attacks a couple of years ago and last year, we were sending people over there to help. When we've had attacks
help?
Over here,
what do you mean by help?
Help in their investigations. We don't bring European police services over here to help us in our investigations. Our police services are
it sounds like something you're just making up, David. On what basis are you saying this?
It was in the newspapers. Scotland was in the Are you saying that the newspapers were wrong? Well, let me ask.
Well, the newspapers are frequently wrong about almost everything.
Let me ask you another question then. Do you think that after the battering that the economy is going to take, and the economy is going to take a battering, and everybody knows it?
Well, I don't think that's true. Oh, stop sniffing, man.
Bad thing. Sorry, it would be such a bad thing if the property in this country went down.
Well, that's unlikely to happen.
Right, I disagree.
Well, then I think you're on your own, mate. There was a report that just came out just today that said the small downtick in property prices is about to be overtaken by another huge surge that will last for at least the next 15 years. Property in this country, people have been waiting for property in this country to tank for ages. I waited for 10 years. Talk about stupid idiot. I'm a stupid idiot. I waited for 10 years for property in this country to go down to the point that I might be able to afford it. 10 years I rented, waiting for property to tank, while all around people were saying that, any minute now it'll go down. And did it? No. Just kept going up and up and up and up and up. Property is going to be entry-level homes are going to be 15 times average wages pretty soon. It ain't going to tank. But then neither will the economy. Let's not get extremist about it. If we leave the European Union and if we never do any business with Europe again, the country will continue. It's not going to burst into flames, flip upside down and sink. It's just that we'll all be poorer. I mean, we won't notice it because we won't have an identical copy of our country that has stayed in the EU in order to compare and contrast. But it's undeniable that we're already poorer. And anybody that denies that is obviously not paying attention. I've got to go, David. Get a tissue. Leicester Square. Hello, Milan.
Hi, Nick. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. You're in Leicester Square.
Because there was a film festival in Leicester Square this week.
Is that right? What kind of a film festival?
Fright Fest, so there'll be loads of horror films.
Ah. Hey, you know what's good? I saw the other day, I signed a disclaimer or a piece of paper that says I can't talk about it, but I think that the period that I can't talk about it is up. I hope so. It's the new Tom Cruise film. It's called American Made, I think, something like that. It's about, I won't tell you. I'll just tell you it's very, very good.
Yeah, is it based on a true story?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's
it's
right.
It's about a gun runner and a drug runner and all the rest of it. It's a hoot, actually.
I definitely. Okay, that's on my list as well as Apocalypse Now. As you.
Oh my God, that's right. I forgot. You haven't seen Apocalypse Now yet. That is alarming. You'll tell me you haven't seen. You'll tell me you haven't seen Blue Velvet either.
I think I saw that 20 years ago, but I can't remember it. But I was going to mention about Theresa May. Oh, by the way, the film festival was fantastic. Theresa May, I think she's trying to say to the public, subtitles, don't focus on the terrible EU negotiations with the EU. I'm going to start blaming the CEOs. So the public, please vent your anger towards the CEOs and don't look at David Davis's abysmal negotiations. So I think it's a complete distraction. Because
she's going to have to do better than that.
It's been embarrassing, absolutely embarrassing. I've never ever, as a negotiator for a commercial contract, never once gone in and said, I want, and rather than actually trying to negotiate and see
and throwing choice insults all the while. I mean, what do they expect? Of course, the other side is going to dig its heels in and get irate if you make them irate. I'm going to have to go, man, because I'm right up against the end of this super show. But thanks for that, and I'm glad that you enjoyed Leicester Square.
Cheers.
All right, okay. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call Darren Adam on, who will be with you in just moments. Let me remind you that it's Steve Allen coming in at 4 o'clock. He'll set you straight, don't you worry about that. And if you stick our LBC app up your device, then you need never miss a moment. You can take us here, there and everywhere, baby. You can listen to LBC wherever you want, wherever you are. I'm Nick Abbott. I'll chew over whatever happens between now and next Friday with you from 10 o'clock. Like I said, it's Steve Allen at 4. But right now, Darren Adams.
Thank you very much, Nick. Later on this morning, talking about